So what's more likely?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
An all-powerful, mysterious God created the universe and then decided not to give any proof of his existence? Or that he simply doesn't exist at all, and that we created him so we wouldn't have to feel so small and alone?
I don't know. I couldn't imagine living in a world where God didn't exist. No. I wouldn't want to.
How do you know you're not deluding yourself? I mean, for me, I need proof.
Proof. Did you love your father?
What?
Your dad, did you love him?
Yes, very much.
Prove it.
Does God exist? We're going to talk about that, or I'm going to talk about that. Now, you've been told all your life that you're stupid if you're a theist. But are you? Are you? I say you're not, but someone needs to tell you why, I think. Because you probably don't know why, and if you don't, you're going to be more likely to believe the establishment when they tell you that you are. Today, there's enormous pressure placed upon people to disbelieve in God, a disbelief that is promoted by the establishment for the purpose of weakening them, leaving them susceptible to the control of the wealthy. Do you doubt that? Then just ask yourself whether or not the establishment would propound the existence of God if that would aggrandize their power more than the propounding of atheism. You know the answer. If they could benefit more from telling you that God exists, then they would. And then all these talking heads on the TV would be up there talking about God and punishment and damnation. You know they would. But anyway, I'm going to go over 4 arguments for God's existence. The cosmological argument, the teleological argument, the ontological argument, and moral arguments. And then at the end, I'm going to throw in some statistics and mathematics just for good measure. So here we go. First, the cosmological argument. One of the most popular versions of the cosmological argument is the Kalam cosmological argument, which is based on 2 premises. 1, everything that begins to exist has a cause. 2, the universe began to exist because it's impossible to have an infinite sequence of causes. From these premises, the argument concludes that the universe must have a cause, which is often identified as God. Another version of the cosmological argument is the argument from contingency, which argues that the universe as a whole is contingent, meaning that it could have been different or not existed at all. This argument suggests that there must be a necessary being which is not contingent. That explains the existence of the universe. This necessary being is often identified as God. In other words, it could have been different, or it could have not been at all. Ipso facto, somebody had to have done it who isn't contingent. Anyway, it's kind of like those dominoes there falling over. And, that makes a little bit of sense to me. I mean, even Aristotle said that. Aristotle was the consummate materialist. He didn't believe there was anything other than the material world, and he characterized the universe as matter in motion. But even he was forced to concede that sooner or later you had to have an immovable mover. So anyway, and Aristotle, he was so stupid, right? All right. Next is the teleological argument. It's an argument for the existence of God based on the perceived evidence of order, purpose, and design in the natural world. One of the most famous formulations of the teleological argument is William Paley's watchmaker analogy of finding a watch on the ground. the watch implies the existence of a watchmaker. That's right. You're walking along, you find a watch on the ground. Well, somebody had to make the watch. It's kind of intricately structured. And then another version of the teleological argument is the fine-tuning argument, which focuses on the precise conditions necessary for life to exist in the universe. This argument suggests that the universe appears to be finely tuned to support life. And it is. Just the slightest imbalance of the way things are, and life wouldn't be able to exist. I even saw an argument the other day about the moon. If it were orbiting the Earth in just the slightest different way, it would cause everything to go to shit and the world to fall apart. So anyway, that makes sense too. And the more you look into that one, the more you think that it might be valid. And next is the ontological argument, and I think this one's probably the strongest argument of the ones that I'm going over today. There are two basic ones, Anselm's argument and Descartes' ontological argument. That's the one I think is the strongest, Descartes. But anyway, Anselm's argument. Who was Anselm? He was some old fella back in the old days, back in the Middle Ages, and he must have been, reputable dude because someone spent the time and money to actually put him on a stained glass window right there. That's him, old Anselm. I don't know. Anselm's argument, though, goes like this. God is a being greater than which cannot be conceived. If you could think of something that is greater than God, surely that something would be God. Think of two beings, one that exists and one that doesn't. Being real is greater than being fictional, so the one that actually exists is greater. Ipso facto, if God didn't exist, we could think of something that would be greater than God. And since we can't even conceive of something greater than God, then God must exist, according to Anselm. And next, Descartes. There's old Descartes there. He looked like an old alcoholic dude. Although I've noticed that guys back then all looked like old alcoholic dudes. Maybe because they were all alcoholic dudes. Those sons of bitches would drink like liters of wine every day, It's been estimated. But Descartes' ontological argument. Step 1. If I cannot conceive of X without Y, then Y belongs to the nature of X. Step 2. I cannot conceive of a supremely perfect being without existence. Step 3. Therefore, existence belongs to the nature of a supremely perfect being. And then, if existence belongs to the nature of a supremely perfect being, then a supremely perfect being therefore exists. Put bluntly and briefly, it's like it says on the meme up there on the left-hand corner, if God's existence is even possible, then it follows that he does exist. Otherwise, you wouldn't even think about it. The mere fact that you even think about it shows that it is. The moral argument for the existence of God is a philosophical argument that attempts to prove the existence of a deity based on the existence of objective moral truths and values. And I think this is probably the weakest of the arguments, but it's still, a legitimately debated argument. So anyway, we're going to go over it. Essentially, it states that if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties don't exist. Objective moral values and duties do exist, however, therefore God exists. And one of the most famous proponents of the moral argument is the philosopher Immanuel Kant, who argued that the existence of a moral law implies the existence of a moral lawgiver. Now, see, to me, this is it's kind of weak, really, because most people today are going around talking about how morality is a construct and it doesn't really exist. That's what the wokey dokies are all going around saying. I don't believe that, but, to me, this is it's probably one of the weakest ones, at least to argue with. Okay, next is I call it the probability argument. Actually, it's sort of an offshoot of the teleological argument, but essentially it seeks to prove the existence of God by the probabilities of a successful gene mutation and the odds against said gene mutation. And it basically goes like this. The mathematical problem for evolution comes when you want a series of related mutations. The odds of getting two mutations that are related to one another is the product of their separate probabilities. And there it gives the number there, which basically is a 1 followed by 14 zeros, or 100 trillion. So the mathematical odds of getting two successful gene mutations in a row is 100 trillion to 1. And that's just two of the damn things. To be able to change one species into another, you'd have to have hundreds of successful gene mutations all related to one another. The odds of getting 3 mutations in a row, that's 1 billion trillion to 1. That's just 3 of them. And to change one species into another would require hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of mutations, successful mutations. Imagine a chimp pounding on a typewriter and spitting out the Encyclopedia Britannica on the first shot with no errors, and it would be even greater than that against it, infinitely greater than that. But anyway, like I said, I think that's more of an offshoot of the teleological argument. Now, ultimately, do any of these arguments prove a damn thing? No, they don't. They don't prove anything. It requires a leap of faith to believe in God. But likewise, it also requires a leap of faith to disbelieve in God, because ultimately, there's no way to prove it either way. I did a video a while back about atheism as a religion, and I, to my satisfaction, showed pretty clearly that atheism is just as much a religion as anything else. It's a I guess you could say a sect of pantheism, the worship of nature. But ultimately, it just comes down to what you want to believe. The purpose of this video is to show you that you are not stupid because you believe it. There are vastly more intelligent people in the world and in history who have believed in God, and they weren't stupid. So just because you don't believe in God doesn't mean that you are either. Always ask yourself, qui bono? Who benefits? Who benefits from telling you there isn't any God? Look at the results. Look at the degradation in the human spirit brought on because of it. Then ask yourself who benefits from the goddamn thing, and then you'll know why society wants to tell you you're stupid because you believe in God. So ultimately, that's it. If you like my video, give me a like and subscribe. Follow me. I'm getting to where I'm doing more and more of these lately, and I like doing them. It's a hobby. If nothing else, it just congeals my own thoughts, focus. So anyway, thank you very much. Adios.